Presidential hopefuls for calling out Hillary Clinton for her inaction to the Benghazi attack.
Senator Rand Paul said Benghazi was a 3 a.m. phone call that she never picked up. Everyone on this panel knows these accusations are baseless, from our own investigation and all those before it.
Really? Senator Rand Paul, presidential candidate and author of Our Presidents and Their Prayers, says America is overlooking the truth behind Benghazi.
That night, she sent an email to her family saying, "We had a terrorist attack and the ambassador was killed." But then for weeks and weeks, they kept saying it wasn't a terrorist attack, it was a protest about a movie. So I think there was a purposeful and deceitful plan to mislead the American public. And I think that's without question true. But to me, what's been more important is that the 9 months leading up to Benghazi, up to the assassination of the ambassador, Hillary Clinton's State Department kept refusing requests for more security. That, to me, is probably the most important thing.
That and the idea, Ambassador John Bolton has been on our air saying things like when he was an ambassador and he had a Secretary of State watching over him, nobody that he worked for would have left someone out in the field fighting for their life and gone home for the night and gone to bed and just let it go on. Why did no one ask her about the timeline of when did you go home? When did you call in? Why weren't you doing anything actively to try and save the lives of people that were working in your name?
I don't think I know the answer to that, but I do know that they were asked, she was asked, did you communicate with the ambassador by email? And she said no. But the other question is, he was sending cables back, and a cable sort of an official, request from the ambassador to the Secretary of State. It's not like a casual email. It's not like a postcard, hey, I'm in Libya, you want to talk? It's a cable saying, we were under threat of potentially being overrun. This is in a month before the attack. And I asked her in committee, face to face, I said, did you read the ambassador's cables? She wants to slough this off as if it was somebody else's responsibility. But when you're in charge, when you're the Secretary of State, you can't simply say, oh, that was somebody else's job and I had nothing to do with it. It was one of the most dangerous places in the world, and there's no excuse for her not providing adequate security there.
Some in the military asking today, what does it say about what kind of commander-in-chief she would be? And maybe that's the lesson, that's the takeaway.
I think her conclusion is she's going to pass the buck and it's somebody else's responsibility. Also, nobody really was fired over all of this. A lot of bad decisions were made, and there were many failures to provide adequate security. I mean, it wasn't one request. There was at least a dozen requests for more security in Benghazi. It was bad decision-making.
Well, there are theories, though, about why there isn't more of an investigation, why there wasn't more looked into, and some people say it has to do with what was actually going on there. I've heard you raise this question. It's been rumors in the background about gun running related to this operation.
There's a public report, not classified, that was in the newspaper that said there was a Turkish ship that left Libya 3 days before the ambassador was killed, full of arms, that went to Turkey, and then Syrian rebels were coming up into Turkey and getting these arms. I asked her directly, did you know anything about this? And she said no. She was asked again yesterday, did you know anything about this? And she said no. I frankly just don't believe that. There have been all kinds of reports in the media saying the CIA was doing this. Weapons were being routed into Syria from a variety of sources. And I think the CIA had something to do with this. I don't know if it was legal or not, because I don't know that we had voted on it. And so I think there's no way that the Secretary of State didn't know this was happening. And why was the CIA annex there?
So the hearing has come and gone now. She comes out this morning to great applause and fanfare. It seems like it is not resonating with the American people. How do you change that as a candidate?
I think it depends. I think it will go to wisdom and judgment. When there's a one-on-one debate between the Republican nominee and if it's Hillary Clinton, one-on-one, I think you look her in the eye and say, why didn't you provide defense for these people? Why weren't you there for the ambassador? Why didn't you read his cables? But it shouldn't be so much about this spin of whether or not it was a protest. That stuff rings hollow with me, and I think the public thinks that's partisan. But if you ask the public, do you want a commander-in-chief who will defend our embassies and make sure they're adequately protected and listen to them when they're requesting more? I think that's an 80–90% issue. So I think a lot of the public will eventually judge her as unqualified.
Let's talk about you and your own campaign. You have Senator Mitch McConnell saying today that you should be focusing on your Senate race. How do you respond to something like that?
Well, I don't think that. I think this is people saying what he might have said, so I don't think it's actually a direct report. I think that we have something to offer. I think we have a chance of winning. I wouldn't do this if I didn't think we could win. I think we have the strongest ground game in Iowa. We have 20 college campuses organized in Iowa, several thousand students agreeing to already caucus for us. We have a lot of support from independents and from liberty-minded Republicans. So we think we have a good ground operation. We think we're right in the middle of this. We also think it's going to mix around and change. When at this point in 2012, Herman Cain was leading, and he didn't win a primary. So I think things will change around quite a bit. It's going to be quite a bit different in January.
You talk about mix around and change. The thing that we've seen most recently is Donald Trump falling behind Ben Carson in Iowa. What do you make of that?
I think it's the beginning of his decline. I think he will decline and go towards the periphery as we get closer, because I think people are going to want someone serious to lead the nation, someone who really we would respect and would be respected around the world. I mean, some of the complaints of conservatives are that we aren't respected around the world, you know, with this commander-in-chief. We're going to replace this commander-in-chief with someone who really has his claim to fame is vulgarity. I don't think vulgarity equates with insight. And so I think eventually people are going to say, we do want someone serious to be in charge of our country.
All right. Senator Rand Paul there.